The barn was loud with barking, yelling, and laughing. But in one lonely corner, a scarred German shepherd sat shaking behind old, rusty bars. His fur was dull, and his eyes looked empty. The sign above him said, "Abandoned police dog." Once, he had a name, Rex. Once, he had been a hero. He had saved lives, chased bad guys, and stood proudly next to his handler. Now he was nothing but a forgotten soldier being sold like trash. Once a police K9 dog, now abandoned and for sale for $1. No one dared to come close. He growled weakly. His spirit was broken. The auctioneer's voice boomed out, "Starting bid, $1." The crowd laughed. No one moved. No one cared. People stood around whispering and laughing. "Used to be a police dog," someone said meanly. "Now he's worth just $1." Another man laughed. Who would want a broken dog like that? But in the crowd stood a little girl, no older than 6. She was holding a single crumpled dollar bill in her tiny hand. Her eyes didn't see an abandoned and hurt dog. She saw something else, something broken that still had hope. When she stepped forward, her mother tried to pull her back, whispering, "Sweetheart, that dog is dangerous." The child whispered, "No, he's not." She stared into his wounded eyes. "I want to buy him," she whispered. The crowd gasped. Laughter spread through the room. Then the entire barn fell silent. No one knew what was about to happen next. That this little girl was about to uncover a truth that would shake the entire town. Stay with us because this amazing story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The barn smelled like rust, straw, and sadness. Sunlight came through the cracks in the wooden walls, cutting through the dust that hung in the air. Inside a corner cage sat a German shepherd. His once golden coat was now a dull mix of dirt and dried blood. His name, though no one used it anymore, was Rex. Once he was a hero, a decorated canine officer, a dog who had stood beside his handler through gunfire, explosions, and chaos. His name had been spoken with pride across the police station. Children used to take pictures with him at community fairs. Medals once hung from his collar. But that was before the day everything changed. During a midnight drug raid, Rex had jumped between his handler and a bullet. The shot grazed his spine. He saved a life that night but lost everything afterward. He was declared unfit for duty, retired, thrown away, and eventually sold by the police department to a shelter that didn't care who he was, just what he cost. Weeks turned into months. The light in his eyes faded. He stopped barking, stopped eating much, stopped believing anyone would ever call his name again. When the small-town auction listed him as Lot 47, aggressive German Shepherd, $1 starting bid, no one looked twice. To them, he was just another broken animal with scars and a bad attitude. Men in muddy boots walked past his cage, shaking their heads. Too old, too mean. Not worth it. Each word landed like another wound. Rex sat still, his ears drooping, tail not moving. He had seen the world's worst and given it his best, and this was his reward. But even in his silence, something inside him still flickered. A memory. A faint echo of his handler's voice, the warmth of a command, the feel of a proud pat on the head. That memory was the only thing keeping him alive. Outside the cage, the auctioneer's loud voice echoed across the barn. Next up, Lot 47. $1 starting bid. The crowd murmured, unimpressed. Some laughed. And just as the hammer was about to fall with no buyer, a small, trembling voice broke through the noise. I'll buy him." Heads turned. The crowd parted. And there, holding a single dollar bill with both hands, stood a little girl. Her eyes were locked onto Rex's. For the first time in months, the old K9 lifted his head. The old auction barn groaned under the weight of noise and dust. Wooden beams creaked overhead, and the faint smell of hay mixed with the bitter scent of oil and sweat. The morning sun spilled through broken windows, lighting the lines of people who had gathered to bid on forgotten lives. Horses too slow, dogs too old, and animals too tired to matter anymore. The auctioneer, a large man with a loud voice and little compassion, stood on a raised platform, shouting prices into the crowd. $10 for the collie. $15 for the pup with the blue eyes. His voice cracked through the stale air like a whip. Each slam of the gavel echoed like a heartbeat, ending one story, beginning another. In the corner, the German shepherd sat behind iron bars. His fur was streaked with dried blood and mud. His eyes watched the people drift past, men in denim jackets, women holding coffee cups, children pointing at the animals as if they were toys. Every few seconds, someone would stop, glance at him, and move on quickly. He was too large, too scary, too scarred. One man muttered, "Looks like he's been in a fight." Another laughed. "Looks like he lost one." The crowd chuckled. Rex turned his head away, closing his eyes. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just existed. The metal gate beside him rattled as another dog was dragged out, a younger one, wagging its tail, eager to please. The crowd's mood lifted instantly. "Now that's a good boy," someone shouted. Hands went up, money was exchanged, and applause followed. When Rex's turn came, the laughter faded. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Lot 47, he announced half-heartedly. "Former police dog, but, not fit for work anymore. $1 starting bid." Silence. People shuffled their feet. No one moved. The auctioneer tapped the microphone. "Come on now. $1 for a strong animal. Anyone?" Nothing. Then a quiet sound. Small footsteps, soft and hesitant, echoed through the barn. Heads turned. At the back of the crowd, a little girl in a purple jacket stepped forward, clutching a crumpled dollar bill. Her eyes weren't filled with fear, only compassion. She wasn't looking at a dangerous dog. She was looking at someone who needed to be saved. The heavy barn doors creaked open, letting in a rush of cold air and sunlight that cut through the gloom. Every head turned toward the entrance. A small figure stepped inside, a little girl, no more than 6, clutching her mother's hand. Her purple hoodie looked too big for her, sleeves nearly covering her fingers. But her eyes, wide, curious and innocent, carried a strange kind of quiet courage. Her mother, Officer Emily Carter, hesitated near the doorway, glancing around the crowded barn with discomfort. "Lily, stay close to me," she whispered. But Lily wasn't listening. Her gaze had already found something, or rather, someone. Across the room, inside a rusted cage, sat the German shepherd. The light hit his eyes just right, revealing a story too painful to tell. There was something about the way he sat, proud yet broken, that made Lily's heart ache. People were busy bidding on goats, chickens, and a playful puppy wagging its tail. Laughter and shouts filled the air, but Lily didn't hear any of it. She only saw him. The dog's body was scarred, his ear torn, his nose bruised. But his eyes, they weren't angry. They were tired, sad, like someone who had seen too much and lost too many. She tugged gently at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered, "why is that dog in a cage all alone?" Emily followed her daughter's gaze and frowned. "Sweetheart, that one's not for us. He's not safe." Her tone was firm, but Lily didn't look away. "He's just scared," she said softly. "Not bad." A few people nearby chuckled, overhearing the conversation. "That old mutt," a man muttered. "He's trouble. Wasn't even worth training." Another scoffed. "He's only good for the junkyard now." But Lily didn't flinch. She took a slow step forward, her tiny sneakers crunching on the straw. The closer she got, the more the German shepherd lifted his head. His ears twitched. His breathing changed. For the first time in months, someone wasn't afraid of him. The auctioneer's voice boomed again. "Lot 47. $1 starting bid." The crowd barely paid attention. Lily's small hand slipped into her pocket, pulling out a single, slightly crumpled dollar bill. Her mother's eyes widened. "Lily, no." But it was too late. The little girl stepped closer to the cage, her voice trembling but clear. "I want to buy him." The barn went silent. Every eye turned toward her. And for the first time, the wounded dog didn't look away. The barn fell into stunned silence. The auctioneer's mouth hung open, the gavel frozen in midair. A few people chuckled under their breath. Others exchanged puzzled looks. In the sea of weathered faces and rough boots, That tiny girl with her dollar bill looked impossibly out of place. Yet somehow, more determined than anyone else in the room. Lily stood firm, her small hand clutching the worn dollar like it was worth $1 million. Her voice, though soft, carried weight. "I want to buy him," she repeated. Her mother, Emily, knelt beside her, her face caught between pride and panic. "Sweetheart, that dog isn't a toy. He's hurt. He's scared. He might bite." But Lily shook her head. "He won't hurt me," she whispered, her eyes never leaving the dog's. "He's just waiting for someone." A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. "Kid wants to buy a killer," someone shouted from the back. Another added, "Let her. Maybe she'll teach it to bark at butterflies." The auctioneer forced a smile. "Well, missy, this ain't a pet store. You sure you want that one?" Lily didn't blink. She stepped forward, holding out the dollar with both hands. "Yes, I'm sure." The German shepherd, sitting behind the bars, watched her every move. His ears twitched at the sound of her voice. The last time someone had spoken softly to him was months ago, back when he was still part of the K-9 unit. Something in her tone stirred a forgotten instinct. Trust. Emily sighed, realizing her daughter's mind was made up. She turned to the auctioneer, her voice quiet but steady. "How much for him?" The man scratched his head. "No one else bid. Guess it's yours for $1. The gavel struck with a hollow thud. Gasps and murmurs filled the barn. Some mocked, some smiled, but everyone watched as Lily walked toward the cage, dollar gone from her hand, replaced by something far more valuable, courage. The little girl stopped just inches from the bars. The German shepherd lowered his head, eyes searching hers. And in that stillness, surrounded by laughter and judgment, a bond was born between two souls who had both been forgotten. For a long moment, nothing moved. Dust floated in the shafts of sunlight, and the barn seemed to hold its breath. The little girl stood before the cage, her small hand trembling as she reached forward. The German shepherd's golden eyes flickered between caution and curiosity. He had seen hands before, hands that hit, dragged, and chained. But this one was different. Lily knelt down, her knees pressing into the cold dirt floor. "Hi," she whispered softly, her voice barely louder than the hum of the ceiling fan above. "My name's Lily. It's okay." Her words carried warmth, something the old K-9 hadn't felt in a long time. The dog's muscles tensed. His lips twitched, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest, a warning born of pain, not anger. The crowd stepped back nervously. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. "Lily, step back," she warned, her voice sharp. But Lily didn't move. She looked into the dog's eyes, not with fear, but with understanding. "You're not bad," she said gently. "You're just scared." The growl faded. The German shepherd tilted his head slightly, studying the small human who refused to flinch. His ears perked forward. His tail, stiff and still for so long, gave a faint, uncertain twitch. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even the auctioneer lowered his microphone, eyes wide. Lily smiled, inching a little closer. "See? You remember," she murmured. "You remember what it's like to be loved." She pressed her small palm against the cold iron bars. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then slowly, the dog lifted his paw, hesitant, trembling, and placed it on the other side of the bars, aligning perfectly with her hand. The barn erupted in whispers. Emily covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears she couldn't explain. The once feared police dog, the one everyone avoided, had just reached out to a child. Lily grinned through the dust and noise, her eyes shining. "It's okay, boy," she said softly. "You're safe now." Rex's breathing slowed. For the first time in months, his heartbeat wasn't a rhythm of fear. It was steady, calm, alive. In that single, fragile moment, something powerful happened. A wounded soul found hope again. And everyone watching knew it wasn't just a child who had rescued a broken dog. It was a broken hero who had finally found a reason to live. The air in the barn hung heavy with disbelief. For a moment, it was as if the world had frozen. Every whisper silenced, every smirk forgotten. All eyes were fixed on the little girl kneeling beside the cage, her hands still pressed against the bars where the German shepherd's paw rested. The auctioneer blinked, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Well, looks like we've got ourselves a buyer," he stammered, forcing a grin. $1, going once." His voice cracked slightly, the usual arrogance replaced by uncertainty. No one else spoke. The barn stayed silent except for the faint hum of flies circling overhead. "Going twice," he said, scanning the crowd. Some people chuckled softly. A few shook their heads in disbelief, muttering under their breath. "What a waste," one man scoffed. "That dog's finished," another whispered. "Poor kid. She doesn't know what she's buying." Emily stood behind her daughter, torn between worry and pride. She had seen countless dangerous dogs during her years as an officer. But something in Rex's eyes, something in the way he had responded to Lily, felt different. Not aggression, not madness. Just pain. And maybe gratitude. "Sold." The auctioneer's gavel came down with a hollow thud. The sound echoed through the barn like a heartbeat. A ripple of laughter and murmurs followed, but Lily didn't care. Her dollar was gone, but her smile was brighter than ever. She turned to her mother, her eyes sparkling. "Can we take him home now?" Emily hesitated. "Sweetheart, we'll need to sign some papers first." She glanced at the auctioneer, who shrugged indifferently. "Fine. The mutt's yours," he said. "Hope you know what you're doing." As Emily handed over the dollar, the old German shepherd shifted on his paws. His ears perked up at the sound of Lily's voice. For the first time in a long time, someone had chosen him. Not because he was useful, not because he was strong, but because someone believed he deserved love. Lily knelt again, whispering through the cage bars. "Don't worry," she said with a small smile. "I'll take care of you now." And in that dusty barn full of forgotten souls, a story worth far more than $1 had just begun. As the echo of the auctioneer's gavel faded, a murmur swept through the barn like a wave. No one could quite believe what they had just witnessed. A 6-year-old girl had walked into an auction full of hardened adults and, with a single dollar, bought a dog everyone else had written off. The crowd began to whisper. Some people laughed in disbelief. Others looked uncomfortable. "She really paid for that thing," a woman muttered. "Poor kid doesn't even know what she's gotten herself into." An old farmer shook his head. "That dog's seen things he shouldn't have. You can't fix an animal like that." But a few others stayed quiet, their eyes lingering on the strange connection between the child and the battered German shepherd. The same dog that had growled at anyone who came near now sat still, his head lowered, eyes locked on the girl who had saved him. Lily stood proudly beside the cage, her tiny fingers wrapped around the rusty bars. "It's okay, boy," she whispered again. "You're coming home." Her voice carried a calmness that cut through the noise. Even those who had mocked her moments ago fell silent, unsure why the scene suddenly felt so sacred. Emily approached the cage slowly, her heart pounding. Every instinct told her to be careful, but her mother's heart told her something different. She crouched beside her daughter. "Lily, sweetheart," she said softly. "Let's open the door together, okay?" Lily nodded eagerly, looking up at her mother with hope shining in her eyes. Together, they turned the latch. The old hinges creaked, and the cage door swung open. The crowd tensed, expecting chaos, expecting the dog to lunge, to snarl, to prove them right. But Rex didn't move. He blinked slowly, lowering his head as if he couldn't believe he was being freed. Lily took a small step forward, her hand trembling but fearless. "Come on, boy," she whispered. "You're safe now." Rex's paws hesitated at the edge of the cage. For a second, he froze. Then, with one slow step, he crossed the line that had caged him for months. The barn fell completely silent. No laughter, no whispers, just the sound of his claws touching the wooden floor and Lily's small voice saying, "Good boy." And in that instant, even the harshest hearts in that room knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Rex stood frozen just outside the cage, his body trembling with uncertainty. The world beyond the bars seemed too open, too loud, too cruel. Every noise, the shuffle of boots, the whisper of straw, the faint crackle of the loudspeaker, made him flinch. Freedom wasn't something he trusted anymore. It was something that had hurt him before. Lily, however, didn't see a dangerous dog. She saw someone who needed to be loved. Slowly, she crouched down in front of him, her knees pressing into the dusty barn floor. "It's okay," she whispered softly, her voice trembling with kindness. "No one will hurt you now." Rex's breathing was uneven. His tail remained still, his muscles tight. He lowered his head, ears flat, watching her with those amber eyes that had seen too much pain. His instincts screamed to pull away. But there was something in the little girl's voice that made him stay. Her hand moved closer, inch by inch. Emily stood nearby, tense and ready to pull her daughter back if things went wrong. The crowd, which had gathered into a silent circle, held its collective breath. You could hear the flutter of a bird above, the wind slipping through cracks in the walls, and the faint rhythm of the girl's heartbeat in the stillness. Then her fingers touched his fur. It wasn't a rough touch. It wasn't fearful. It was gentle, like the warmth of a memory long forgotten. Rex flinched at first, his head jerking back slightly. But Lily didn't move away. She kept her hand there, steady, her thumb brushing over the rough scars on his neck. "You're a good boy," she whispered. "You just forgot." Something inside the old canine broke free in that moment. His breath hitched. His body relaxed. Slowly, cautiously, he leaned forward until his forehead touched her knee. A sound escaped the crowd, a mix of gasps and quiet awe. Emily covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. The hardened farmers, the laughing bystanders, all of them stood silent now, humbled by what they saw. Lily giggled softly, her fingers tracing the edge of his torn ear. "See? You remember," she said, smiling through the dirt and sunlight. "You remember what it feels like to be loved." Rex exhaled a long, shaky breath. His tail gave one hesitant wag, then another. The barn filled with quiet wonder. The same dog everyone had feared just minutes ago now sat beside a little girl, calm, trusting, alive again. Emily knelt down beside them, her voice breaking with emotion. "Looks like he's already chosen you," she said. And as the golden light poured through the cracks of the old barn, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This wasn't a rescue. It was a reunion of two hearts that had been waiting to find each other all along. The sun was beginning to set when they left the auction barn. The sky burned orange and pink, and the cold evening breeze carried the faint scent of hay and oil from the trucks outside. Emily led her daughter and the newly purchased German Shepherd toward their small blue car parked near the edge of the lot. Each step the dog took was slow and uncertain, as if he didn't quite believe he was really free. Lily held the end of the rope leashed gently, not tugging, just walking beside him. "Come on, Rex," she said softly, trying the name out for the first time. The dog's ears perked at the sound. It wasn't the name he'd always known, but it felt safe on her lips. He followed her, limping slightly, until they reached the car. Emily opened the back door, hesitating for a second. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" she asked. "He's a big dog. He might not be used to car rides anymore." Lily smiled up at her. "He'll be fine, Mommy. He's brave." For a moment, the mother just stared at the muddy, scarred creature and the little girl holding his leash like it was a lifeline. Then she sighed, half smiling. "All right, partner," she murmured, opening the door wider. "Let's go home." Rex paused, staring into the car like it was another cage. Then Lily climbed in first and patted the seat beside her. "It's okay, boy. I'll stay with you." That was all it took. The old K9 gathered his strength and stepped inside, curling himself carefully next to the little girl. As the car started and the engine rumbled, he let out a low sigh and rested his head on her lap. Lily stroked his fur gently, whispering, "You're safe now." Outside, the road stretched into the fading sunset. Emily glanced in the rearview mirror, her eyes softening as she watched her daughter and the dog. For the first time in a long while, there was peace on both their faces, one rediscovering love, the other finding it for the first time. The car rolled down the empty country road, carrying with it a broken hero, a brave little girl, and the beginning of a new story neither of them could have imagined. The drive home was quiet, the hum of the tires mixing with the soft rhythm of Lily's voice as she whispered to Rex. He lay curled beside her, his head heavy on her lap, eyes half closed. But behind those tired eyes lived memories that never slept. As the car rolled down the lonely road, Rex's mind drifted back to a world he once knew. The flashing red and blue lights, the sharp crackle of radios, the weight of his badge tag glinting under city lights. Back then, He wasn't Lot 47. He was K-903, a legend in his unit. Strong, fearless, loyal to his partner, Officer Daniel Ross. Together, they were unstoppable. He remembered the smell of gunpowder, the thrill of the chase, the satisfaction of catching the bad guys. But more than that, he remembered Daniel's voice, calm, steady, full of trust. "Good boy, Rex," he'd say after every mission, his hand resting proudly on the dog's neck. To Rex, that voice was home. Then came that night. The call had come in at midnight. An armed robbery gone wrong. Daniel and Rex were the first to respond. The suspects were cornered in a warehouse. Gunfire erupted before backup arrived. Daniel shouted for Rex to stay back, but loyalty runs deeper than orders. When one of the men raised his weapon, Rex lunged, faster than the bullet that followed. He took the hit meant for his partner. Pain exploded through his side, hot and blinding. Daniel's voice was the last thing he heard before the darkness took him. "Stay with me, buddy. You're going to be okay." But things were never okay again. When Rex woke in the veterinary unit, the world had changed. Daniel was gone, reassigned after the trauma. And the department decided Rex was too injured, too unstable for duty. The medals didn't matter anymore. Neither did the years of service. He was retired, discarded like old equipment. They sent him to a shelter, and then to another. The lights, the sirens, the uniforms, it all vanished. What replaced them was silence, cages, and the slow decay of a soul built for purpose. And so he learned to stop expecting kindness. Every face that passed his cage blurred into one long shadow of disappointment. Until today. Until her. Lily's voice pulled him back from the memories. "You're safe now, Rex," she whispered, brushing her tiny fingers through his fur. "You don't have to be a police dog anymore. You can just be mine." Rex looked up at her, his tail giving the faintest wag. 4 years, he had served and protected everyone but himself. Now, for the first time, someone wanted to protect him. Emily glanced at them in the rearview mirror, unaware of the story carried in the silence between the two. She only saw a child and her new dog. But in truth, it was something far greater. It was a broken soldier finally finding his way home. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the small front porch of the Carter home. The air smelled of dew and pine, and the quiet hum of the countryside replaced the noise of the auction barn. Rex lay on an old blanket near the door, his body stiff but his eyes open, alert but not afraid. For the first time in months, he had slept without the sound of metal bars closing around him. Lily knelt beside him, holding a small bowl of food. "Here you go, boy," she said gently, sliding it closer. Rex sniffed at it cautiously before taking a tentative bite. She giggled softly. "See? It's better than the stuff they gave you before." Emily watched from the kitchen window, arms crossed, a worried look still etched on her face. "He's still a police dog at heart," she murmured. "He's trained for danger, not cuddles." But as she looked at her daughter smiling and talking to the old K9, she couldn't deny the change she saw. Rex's tail wagged, small, hesitant motions, but real ones. Every day became a quiet ritual of trust. Lily brushed his fur, talking to him about her school, her drawings, and her dreams of being a hero like Mommy. Rex listened to every word, his ears twitching at the sound of her laughter. At night, when thunder rolled across the fields, Lily would slip out of bed and curl up beside him on the living room floor. "Don't be scared," she'd whisper. "I'm here." But it wasn't Rex who needed comfort. It was Lily who found it in his presence. There was something in his calmness, in the weight of his head resting gently on her lap, that made her feel safe in ways words couldn't. One evening, as the golden sunset painted the walls, Emily sat beside them. She reached out slowly, her hand resting on Rex's back. He tensed for a moment, then relaxed, letting out a deep sigh. Emily smiled faintly. "You're not so scary after all," she whispered. From that night on, the three of them became a small, unspoken family. The house no longer felt empty. The sound of Rex's paws on the wooden floor was steady, comforting, like a heartbeat filling a space that had been too quiet for too long. Wounds, both seen and unseen, take time to heal. But sometimes love, even from a child, can do what medicine never could. And in that little house at the edge of town, A forgotten hero and a brave little girl began to teach each other how to live again. It was a calm, quiet night in the Carter household. The clock on the wall ticked softly, and the faint hum of crickets filled the air outside. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, her little hand resting on Rex's back. The German shepherd lay beside her, half asleep but alert, a soldier's instinct that never truly faded. Emily, exhausted from her late shift at the station, turned off the last light and headed upstairs. "Good night, Rex," she whispered, smiling as the dog lifted his head slightly in acknowledgement. His golden eyes followed her until the hallway light dimmed. Then the house sank into silence. But somewhere beyond the yard, that silence was broken. Two figures moved in the dark, their steps soft, deliberate. The sound of metal scraping against a window frame sliced through the stillness. Rex's ears shot up. His body stiffened, every muscle locked into alert mode. He sniffed the air, unfamiliar scent, male, sweat, adrenaline. Danger! He stood slowly, lowering his head as his instincts took over. His eyes darted to Lily, still sleeping peacefully beside him. He let out a quiet whine, a sound only she could have heard, but she didn't wake. A window creaked open in the kitchen. The faint beam of a flashlight swept across the counter. A man's whisper followed. "Keep it quiet. Grab what you can." Rex growled low, deep enough to shake the still air. The intruders froze. "What was that?" one hissed. "Probably just the kid's dog," the other muttered, taking another step forward. "That was a mistake." Rex lunged forward, silent as a shadow, his paws barely touching the floor. The intruders didn't even have time to scream before a blur of fur and fury slammed into them. The flashlight crashed to the ground, the beam spinning wildly across the walls. One man fell backward, his arm caught in Rex's teeth as the dog snarled with a force that sent fear slicing through the room. "Get him off me!" the man yelled, kicking wildly. His partner tried to grab a metal rod from the counter, but Rex turned on him, barking with such authority that the sound echoed down the entire street. Upstairs, Emily jolted awake. "Rex!" She raced down the stairs, her heart pounding. The scene froze her mid-step, the old police dog standing between her sleeping daughter and two terrified intruders pinned to the ground. "Rex, heel!" she commanded instinctively. And just like that, the years of training snapped back. He stepped away, still growling, his eyes fixed on the men as Emily grabbed her radio. "This is Officer Carter requesting immediate backup." Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. The intruders were handcuffed and dragged outside, muttering curses under their breath. One officer shook his head in disbelief. "That dog just saved your whole family."